Our pub crawl ended with the ghosts of the Satin Doll. Presented by Absolutely Haunted. Welcome. Hope you enjoy the video.
When I got to college, I didn't just party. I exploded into a world of freedom. After spending my childhood under the tight grip of overly strict parents, where every move I made was monitored and controlled, I finally broke free. I rushed into fraternity life like a man starved for air, and to be honest, I lost myself in it. At first it felt like harmless fun, just me letting loose after years of restraint. But before long, the parties weren't just a weekend thing. They were happening almost every single night. That's when the real trouble started. I was chasing the thrill of social life while completely neglecting the reason I was there in the first place, to earn a degree. The last night I ever drank was the night my friends and I stumbled across a place called the Satin Doll. That night marked the end of one chapter of my life and the eerie beginning of another. It was the night I discovered that another world exists, just beyond the veil of our own, a world we rarely see, but one that occasionally brushes against ours when the universe slips out of rhythm. When that happens, when past and present collide in some twisted overlap, it can leave you changed in ways you never imagined. I know, because it happened to me, and nothing was ever the same after that night. To tell you the truth, partying had completely taken over my life. It wasn't just a phase anymore, it was a full-blown spiral. My grades had started slipping, and I could see the warning signs flashing like red lights in my rearview mirror. If I didn't rein it in, I was going to lose my scholarship, and there was no way my parents could cover the cost. I knew all of this, really knew it, but that didn't stop me. Every few nights, like clockwork, my friends and I would hit the streets, chasing neon lights and loud music, hopping from bar to club, until the early hours blurred into one long buzzing haze. What we didn't know was that tonight, this seemingly ordinary night out, would mark the turning point. It would be the night that changed everything. We'd been out for over 4 hours by then, drifting from one bar to the next, our laughter getting louder, our steps less steady with every stop. The night had wrapped itself around us like a fog, thick, disorienting, and full of static. Somewhere along the way, too drunk to navigate properly, we took a wrong turn and ended up on a narrow street none of us recognized, in a neighborhood that felt off. The buildings were older here, leaning inward like they were whispering to each other, their windows dark, some of them boarded up. Even the streetlights flickered as if unsure whether to stay lit. "Hey, look at that," I said, pointing at a faded, flickering neon sign that buzzed faintly in the quiet. The Satin Doll Club. The letters glowed a sickly red, casting strange shadows across the sidewalk. "Anyone been here before?" I asked, scanning my friends' faces. "Never heard of it," Griffin said, his voice a little lower than usual, eyes fixed on the sign like it made him uneasy. And maybe it should have. We had both made our way to the top of the stairs, peering down into the thick, yawning darkness below. The rusted metal sign pointed toward a set of basement-level street stairs, tucked against the crumbling brick wall of what looked like an ancient warehouse, its frame groaning softly in the wind like it remembered things it wished it could forget. Something about that stairwell felt wrong, like it didn't belong in our world. Still, some reckless part of me was convinced we were on the edge of an unforgettable night. Maybe even the time of our lives. But deeper in my booze-clouded mind, something colder stirred. A whisper rose from the pit of my stomach, curling up my spine like smoke. "If you go down there, you won't come back the same. If you come back at all." Brent stepped away from his date, Gina, and moved toward the top of the stairs. He peered down into the gloom below, and the look that crept over his face said it all. Pure unease. His usual confidence drained away, replaced by something cold and wary. "No way, man," he said, shaking his head slowly. "Not gonna happen. That place, it doesn't look right. Doesn't look like somewhere we belong." His voice was firm, louder than usual, like he needed to convince more than just us, maybe even himself. "None of us should be going in there." Gina tugged gently at his sleeve, her smile fading as she followed his gaze down the stairwell. The strange silence from below seemed to press upward, as if the place itself was listening. Griffin turned to me, his face glowing with that familiar, unhinged look. The one he always got right before doing something totally insane. Without warning, he thrust his foot out into the air above the first step, wobbling like he might fall, then burst into motion, bounding down into the shadows. As he disappeared through the heavy door at the bottom, he shouted back his favorite line, "I say, let's party!" His laughter echoed behind him, swallowed almost instantly by the dark. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to stop, to turn around, to walk away, to run. But what did I do? I followed him. My feet moved on their own, heavy with dread, carrying me down the cold, narrow stairs. I reached the landing just in time to see Griffin vanish through a massive black-painted metal door. I paused, staring at it. The thing looked like it belonged on a battleship, old, dented, and rimmed with thick rivets. Geez, I thought, how old is this place? Those kinds of doors hadn't been used in decades. The air felt heavier down here, tinged with rust and something older, something musty, almost sweet, like decaying perfume and mold. Then I heard it, music. Soft at first, almost like it wasn't coming through my ears, but through my bones. Jazzy, sultry, strangely beautiful. It drew me forward like a spell, like a dream I didn't remember having. I pushed the heavy door open and stepped inside. That's when I saw it, and that's when the fear truly hit. This was definitely not the kind of club we were used to stumbling into. The moment we stepped inside, it felt like we'd wandered straight into a black and white gangster film. The decor looked like it hadn't been touched since the 1920s or 30s. Velvet drapes, tarnished gold fixtures, smoky amber lighting, and a long polished bar backed by antique mirrors that shimmered like a mirage. Jazz music crooned from a record player that looked authentic enough to belong in a museum. Everything and everyone looked like they belonged to another time. The patrons weren't dressed in anything remotely modern. The men wore pinstripe suits, slicked back hair, and wide-brimmed fedoras. The women sparkled in beaded flapper dresses, cigarette holders dangling from their fingers, pearls resting on pale skin. "I swear, man," I muttered to Griff, trying to laugh off the chill crawling up my spine. "Every guy in here looks like they walked straight out of the St. Valentine's Day massacre. I'm half expecting someone to whip out a Tommy gun." He chuckled, but even he looked uneasy. Because the strangest part wasn't how old-fashioned it all seemed. It was how real it felt. "Yeah, me too," Brent snapped, shooting a sharp look at Griffin. "I told you not to come in here. This place is weird, really creepy." "I mean, why the hell is it tucked away in the basement of some old warehouse, miles from the main commercial district?" Seth, trying to keep his cool, added, "I'm pretty sure we're almost at the old river docks." "I think we should get the..." His words were cut off before he could finish by a monstrous figure stepping out of the shadows near the door. Where had he come from? We hadn't noticed him before, but now he stood there like a living shadow, broad-shouldered and silent except for the low rumble of his voice. "Let me show you gentlemen and ladies the way to the action," he said, his tone smooth but carrying an edge of command. The look in his eyes told us everything. We didn't have a choice, not really. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up as a cold shiver ran down my spine. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I was frozen, staring at the towering figure before me. This man was massive, easily 6'5", if not taller. His dark hair was slicked back like something out of an old gangster movie, and a thick cigar hung crookedly from the corner of his mouth, glowing faintly in the dim light. But it was his eyes that unnerved me most, small, beady, and too close together like a rat's, cold and calculating. Then he reached out, and his hand landed on my back, but it wasn't warm like a living man's. It was icy, like touching a slab of frozen steel. Without a word, he gave me a firm shove, pushing me forward toward the others. His presence was unnatural, like a shadow that didn't belong in the present. I knew then, without a doubt, this was no ordinary bouncer. He was a ghost, a lingering spirit from a long-buried past that wasn't done with us yet. "Go on, boys," the ghostly bouncer's voice rumbled low and gravelly. "You don't want to disappoint Vera now, do you?" The expression on his face twisted into something almost warning, like failing Vera was a fate worse than death. A chill slithered through me, cold and unmistakable. "Who's Vera?" Griffin whispered, voice barely audible over the thick silence. The bouncer just laughed, a hollow, rattling sound that seemed to echo from the walls themselves. Without another word, he turned slowly, his massive frame blurring at the edges as if he were dissolving into smoke. I blinked, and he was gone, swallowed by the shadows that clung to the corners of the room like living things. We were left standing in the main room, and the air shifted. The faint hum of jazz music swirled around us again, but now it was darker, full of whispered secrets and unforgotten sorrows. The heavy velvet curtains fluttered gently, though no breeze stirred. Flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows on the cracked plaster walls, illuminating the smoky haze that hung like a veil between the past and present. Somewhere in the back of the room, a woman's laughter floated, soft and haunting, like the faintest thread of a forgotten melody. Vera? Whoever she was, we were already part of her story now, and I had a sinking feeling that story wasn't going to end well. Behind the bar stood the oldest man I'd ever seen, if he was even alive. His skin was pale and translucent, stretched tight over sharp cheekbones that looked like they'd been carved from bone. His eyes were deep-set and flickered with an unnatural, eerie glow, like embers smoldering long after a fire's gone out. His thinning white hair was slicked back, and he moved with a slow, deliberate grace, as if he was part of the shadows themselves. He was washing and hand-drying glasses with a methodical, almost ritualistic precision, when he finally glanced up and sized us up, with a look so filled with disgust it could have frozen the air. "You boys out on the town dressed like that," he chuckled, a dry, rasping laugh that scraped like old nails on a chalkboard. I glanced at us, all in shorts and tank tops, sweaty and clearly not cut out for any kind of formal night. Brent gave a quick shrug and said, "Sorry, man," his voice steady but cautious as he looked around the room filled with men in sharp suits and polished shoes, their faces as serious and stiff as the era their clothes belonged to. "If there's a dress code here, maybe we should just move along." The bartender smirked, a crooked grin that didn't quite reach those glowing eyes. "Dress code?" he rasped, voice dry as dust. "Around here, boys, the only dress code is don't get yourself dead." He winked, or at least it looked like a wink, if ghosts could wink, and went back to polishing his glassware, leaving us to wonder if he was joking or issuing a warning. I was squinting, trying to make sense of the bar in the dim, flickering light. The decor was what my sister calls Art Deco. Sleek lines, geometric shapes, and heavy shadows. "Sure don't have to pay much for lighting in a place like this," I quipped, trying to break the tension. The bartender's glare sliced through me like a blade, and for a split second, I swear, his eyes glowed a dangerous, burning red, like embers flickering to life in the dark. "Sit down!" he barked, voice low and sharp as broken glass. He turned to a man sitting at the far end of the enormous oak bar, which looked like an antique reclaimed from another century, buried deep in the shadows. The man was smooth, polished, and impossibly handsome in a way that felt both nostalgic and unreal, like an old black and white movie star, had been dipped in moonlight and wrapped in a ghostly veil. His features were perfect, but faintly translucent, his eyes gleaming with an otherworldly calm, a charming smile playing on the lips that hadn't truly breathed in decades. The bartender sniffed loudly. "You hear that, Charlie?" he said, his voice dripping with something like amusement. "This little man doesn't like the lighting here so much." Charlie's smile widened, and with a casual flick of his wrist, the dim glow in the room seemed to soften just enough to make the place feel alive, yet somehow even colder. Charlie leaned forward. I was shocked. He looked like a movie star, and I don't mean the ones of today. I mean, he looked like Rock Hudson had just stepped out of the movie screen and had come to life. Stephanie, Seth's girlfriend, nudged Gina, who was out tonight with Brent, and both girls giggled in that weird way girls do when they think some guy is really hot. "You gonna order a drink or critique the decorating?" Charlie growled. "We'll order a drink," as we all hastily pulled up bar stools. "What will it be, gents?" the bartender asked. For the first time, I noticed something that I desperately wanted to be happening, because I had too much to drink already. But I swear as the old fellow laid his hands across the bar top awaiting our orders. His hands rippled like a snake or something was moving under the skin of his hands. I gasped and backed away. The old man gave me a knowing smile and then laughed out loud. "What's wrong, boy? You look like you've seen a ghost." The entire bar burst into laughter when he said it. "Nails, just give them their drinks already." Charlie sounded irritated. "You damn well know I hate this night above all others." Charlie reached out, picked up his glass, and flung it against the back bar mirror, shattering it. Our whole crew tried to make a run for it when the mirror miraculously fixed itself in seconds, causing Charlie to fling a few expletives. Before anyone could move, the lights above the stage flickered on, bathing the room in a soft, smoky glow. And then, as if summoned from thin air, a band was there. No footsteps, no entrance. They simply appeared on the stage like echoes from a forgotten era. The music began, smooth and haunting, weaving through the heavy air. Then she appeared. A vision in blue. Vera, the ghostly nightclub singer. Her fiery red hair framed a face both delicate and fierce, her presence commanding every eye in the room. She was small, barely 5'3", draped in a shimmering vintage satin gown that caught the dim light with every graceful move. Her hair was swept up in an elegant old Hollywood style, and the moment she opened her lips, her voice spilled out, husky, rich, and utterly mesmerizing. Normally this kind of music wouldn't be my thing, but as she sang a smoky ballad about setting the world on fire, I felt hypnotized, like her voice was wrapping itself around my very soul. And then, just as if she could read my thoughts, Vera's gaze locked onto me alone. Her emerald eyes sparkled with mischief, and she gave me a slow, deliberate wink before letting out a soft, breathy giggle that sent chills right through me. Trevor, the man wants to know what you want to drink," Brent's voice cut through the spell, pulling me back to the room. "Give us 6 beers," I said, hoping to keep things simple. The old man let out a low, guttural noise of disgust. Without breaking eye contact, he reached over and grabbed 6 shot glasses, filling them from a dusty bottle of dark brown liquid. "Whiskey," he croaked, sliding the glasses across the bar with a weight that felt like a challenge. He was daring us, giving us the kind of look that said refusing wasn't really an option. Beers," I tried again, my voice a little shaky. We ordered beers, hoping to keep the peace. Nail straightened up, puffed his chest, and locked eyes with me. "Round here, son," he growled. "It's hooch. Pay up or get gone." He jerked his hand sharply toward the door we'd come in through. Something in that gesture sent a cold shiver down my spine. I swear if I hadn't paid up, I might have been found floating in the river by morning. Without hesitation, I pulled out my money and slid it across the bar, fast. Seth leaned in close, his breath hot against my ear. "Listen," he whispered, voice barely more than a ghostly hiss. "Something's wrong here. Drink whatever the hell they pour you and keep your mouth shut, no matter what. These people, they don't just look at us like we're patrons. They're sizing us up like we're the main course." His eyes darted nervously around the dim room, where shadows seemed to twist and flicker at the edges of vision, as if the very air itself was watching. "Trust me, don't push your luck." Not tonight. It became clear from the looks on my friends' faces that everyone agreed. It was better to drink whatever was handed to us and not stir up trouble. Even Seth, who hadn't insulted a soul yet, leaned over the bar and asked Nails, "How long has this place been here? I don't think we've ever seen this club before." Nails' eyes gleamed as he answered, "Boys, this place stands timeless, like it's been frozen in the day it was built." As he spoke, an icy chill crept through the room, wrapping around us like a shadowy fog. I glanced back at Vera, who was still pouring her soul into the song on stage. For just a flicker of a heartbeat, I swear her beautiful face slipped away, replaced by a grim, hollow skull. My breath caught, but just as quickly as it came, she spun around, locked her emerald eyes on me, and blew me a playful kiss. The moment vanished, and suddenly I forgot all about it. I turned back just as Nails poured fresh drinks, the amber liquid catching the faint, flickering light and casting strange shadows on the cracked bar top. He slid the glasses toward us with a deliberate, almost ritualistic motion. "But if you need a number," he continued, voice low and rough, like gravel scraping on stone, "it'd be 1928. Brent let out a breath he'd been holding, a mix of disbelief and nervous awe. "You're telling us this place has been operating right here, in this very basement, since 1928? That's wild?" Nail's eyes glinted with something that wasn't quite human, a shimmer like moonlight on a grave. "That's what I said, kid, and it's the truth." Around us, the shadows seemed to deepen, stretching longer and thicker, as if the past itself was reaching out through the smoky haze, whispering secrets long buried beneath the cracked floorboards and peeling wallpaper. The air grew colder, heavier, like the breath of unseen watchers closing in. The place became deathly quiet when Griffin, swaying slightly from too many drinks and clearly not reading the room, blurted out, "Was it a mob bar back in the day?" You could have heard a pin drop. Even the soft clink of ice in glasses seemed to freeze in midair. The music stopped. Vera's haunting voice cut off mid-note as her eyes widened. She looked genuinely afraid, her elegant form trembling faintly beneath the stage lights. Every patron turned toward us at once, their faces pale and unmoving, like mannequins in a store window. Behind the bar, Nails raised his brow slowly, his expression turning as cold and lifeless as a tombstone. "Boy," he said, voice low and grave, "you really don't know when to shut that mouth of yours, do you?" Without warning, Nails lunged forward. His bony, corpse-cold hand shot across the bar and yanked Griffin onto the counter like he weighed nothing. The room seemed to tilt as Nails pulled his fist back, ready to strike, with the weight of decades behind it. But before the blow could fall, Charlie's voice sliced through the silence, smooth and commanding like an old jazz riff. "Nails, stop. Make these kids your specialty drink. The night's not growing any younger." Nails hesitated, his glare still burning holes through Griffin's skull. Then with a grunt, he released him, dropping him back onto the bar stool as effortlessly as a doll. Griffin landed with a thud. Eyes wide, face pale. Without another word, Nails picked up a row of dusty glasses and began filling them with something dark, thick, and smoking slightly, as if the drink itself had a soul trying to escape. Within moments of drinking this special concoction, my head felt like it had been set adrift in a thick, soupy fog. The room twisted sideways. Shadows moved where they shouldn't. I looked over at Griffin just in time to see his eyes roll back, and his body crumple to the floor like a puppet with its strings cut. What was in that?" I croaked at Nails, but he only grinned. A wide, unnatural grin that showed too many teeth, and turned his back, whistling an eerie, off-key tune as he dried a blood-specked glass with a red rag that looked suspiciously like it had once been white. Brent, now ghost-pale, clutched at the bar with shaking fingers. He turned his head toward me slowly, mouth opening to say, "I told you so!" Crash! The sound was deafening. The metal door exploded open, slamming into the wall with such force that the entire bar seemed to shudder. A split second later, the pass came roaring back in a hail of bullets and fire. Gunfire erupted from every corner. Muzzle flashes lit up the room like strobe lights from hell. Men in fedoras and long coats stormed in through a crack in time, Tommy guns blazing, spectral figures with hollow eyes screaming in silent rage. The patrons didn't duck. They didn't scream. They simply vanished where they sat, like smoke dissolving into nothing. Vera's voice, once a sultry song, rose into a blood-curdling shriek somewhere above the chaos. I turned my head in time to see Charlie running across the room toward her, dodging a hail of bullets.
Charlie!
But he did not make it in time.
Charlie!
I watched her drop
I've
the
been
microphone, her blue satin dress stained red. And then she too flickered like bad film and was gone. Charlie spun on his heels, his own gun appeared from nowhere. He dissolved and disappeared before my eyes. I tried to get up, to run, to help someone, anyone, but the world was slipping through my fingers. My knees hit the ground. The last thing I saw was Nails raising his glass to the massacre, a sick toast to history repeating itself. And then, darkness. I passed out. We woke up the next morning groggy and aching as the harsh light of day sliced through the grimy windows overhead. A man in a construction hard hat was looming over me, his voice sharp and panicked. "How the hell did you get in here?" he barked. I blinked up at him, the warehouse ceiling coming into view, dusty rafters, hanging chains, and rusted beams. No chandeliers, no bar, no stage, just crates, tools, and years of grime. I sat up, clutching my pounding head, struggling to make sense of what I was seeing. This was the same building, I was sure of it, but everything was different. The ornate wood paneling and velvet booths were gone, replaced by bare concrete and industrial shelving. The place smelled like oil and mildew, not whiskey and perfume. And the others, one by one, they were being shaken awake by a growing number of hard-hatted workers, all demanding answers. The massacre, gone. The gunfire, silence. Vera, no trace. "Move along," one of the foremen snapped. "This is private property. You kids want us to call the cops?" We moved along, quickly. No one spoke. Brent was white as a sheet. Griffin kept rubbing his chest like he'd taken a punch he couldn't remember. Seth walked with his head down, muttering something under his breath I couldn't quite hear. And me? I kept glancing back at the warehouse, half expecting Vera to be standing in one of the high windows, watching us leave. But there was nothing, just shadows and the uneasy feeling that some doors, once open, don't fully close. I gave up drinking. I guess that night in the Satin Doll cured me of my search for excitement. The clubs for me no longer held the allure they once did. I guess the spirits of the Satin Doll helped me find my way, and for that I will be forever grateful.
Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.